Yo, driving through the city, engines roaring loud, 3D visuals spinning, got my crew all proud. Report live with the graphics, keeping the fresh transit. Advance ancient dreams, we're aiming for the best. Let me hear you sing. I'm vibing, yo.
Hello and welcome to part 8 of the Civil Engine tutorial series. In this one we're going to talk about cameras and rendering. I'm actually going to start this just jumping right into how to make a render because I figure a lot of people just want the answer to that question. This way you won't have to wait. So we're in an example project right here. If you want to make a render, the simplest way to do it is click this big red button. This panel will pop out. It's going to try and select an output folder that makes sense for you. So we're going to leave that as a default. You can adjust the quality, and then you just want to go down here and just click screenshot. It's going to take a minute to warm up the rendering engine. This will get faster if you do a lot of renders. It won't take as long after the first one. And there we go, render finished, open file location. And there is our 4K image render. So if you're looking to render, that's the fastest way. Through the course of this video, I'm going to show you a number of ways to use rendering and cameras to communicate the story of your project within Civil Engine, but I wanted to get that one out of the way first. All right, before we go any further, I do want to just do a quick refresher on navigation within Civil Engine. So navigation is largely based on the base model. It's going to try and make movements in accordance to where you are in relation to the base model. So right now it's trying to pick a pivot point and pivot the camera around it as I click and drag the right mouse button. The same is true with clicking and dragging the left mouse button, which is going to pan me in left and right, up and down in relation to the base model. So if we move over and we pivot again, it's now going to try and pivot from a new pivot location. Again, it's doing its best estimation. If you want to manually force a pivot location, you can do a double right click. So let's say that we want to pivot to this shade cover, double right click on it. Now as we zoom around, it's going to rotate around that point. That's also going to be useful as we talk about some of these cameras down here in the bottom left. You can also navigate by flying around, by holding that right mouse click to rotate, and also using WASD. This is going to be for more precise movements, but if you hold down shift, it's going to move faster. So if you kind of want to Superman your project, you can always do it that way. If you want even more control over your camera, you can go to settings, go to camera, and control the camera sensitivity. So this isn't going to affect the fly through, but this will affect the other elements like clicking and dragging with the left mouse button, also rotating. And then the way you can zoom in and out is just by using the middle scroll wheel like this. So when that's dialed all the way up, it's going to do it really fast. By default, you're going to have more precision over those movements. One other trick is if you place an object, or if you want to grab an object that is already placed, let's just place one here. And let's say that we are somewhere over here, but we want to go to this object. We can just click that object and then press F, and it's going to, F for find, it's going to center the camera on that asset. So if you zoom in, it's going to directly zoom in to that selector icon. So if you do feel like you're getting lost, you can always just go and find that asset in the hierarchy, click F, and it's going to zoom you right back into that location. All right, the next thing I want to show is called Explore Mode. And this is a really fun way to explore your project using first and third person. We have a number of different ways to do that. You can access that here in the bottom left camera controls, clicking the Explore tab. You can also do it by using F1, F2, or F3. F1 for pedestrian, F2 for cyclist, and F3 for driver. We have two different kinds. So let's start with pedestrian. And this is just a blank project. I've imported a base model so that we have something to stand on. If we tried to do this without anything, he would just fall in the air forever. But I'm now moving around using WASD on my keyboard and using the right mouse click to control the direction. You can also hold down Shift to run or spacebar to jump. This also works with an Xbox controller, which I'll show in just a bit. If we want to go to cyclist, we could go back to the previous panel or just click here. And it's going to drop you off at the same location that you dropped the other one. So now we're going on our cyclist. And just as a note, that screen tearing with the tires, that's a known issue. If you want to speed up, you can hold down Shift. And in any of these modes, if you press C, then it's going to switch to first person mode. We'll go back and show that with the pedestrian. All right, for the vehicle, I'm actually now connected to my Xbox controller. And to do that, you just need to go into Windows, go to Bluetooth, and connect the Windows approved controller using Bluetooth, and then you should be good to go. So now I'm holding down the right trigger. And again, this works with WASD and holding down Shift to speed up, but I am using the Xbox controller. I'm using the right stick to control the camera. The left stick controls steering. We can also switch between modes using the left D-pad. And then this starts to get fun if you want to brake, which is the left trigger. And you can see you'll get the skid marks and the dust if you want to do that. You can also switch into first person mode by pressing Y, which does the same thing as C, and you can see those controls down on the bottom right. And then we do have one other vehicle type that you can click and use, the hatchback. All right, we're back in our example project, and I want to show explore mode in more of a real world setting. The best way to choose where you're going to drop is to do double right click to position that camera. And then again, we can either press F1, F2, F3, we can click these buttons, or if we have an Xbox controller connected, we can click the left D-pad. So now I'm using the Xbox controller, and this character, his name's Trey, he'll automatically walk upstairs. If you hold down the right trigger, he's going to run. And if you press A, he's going to jump. If you press Y, it's going to switch to first person mode. And then you can switch to bike by pressing the left D-pad. Again, it's going to drop you off at the last known location. So if we want to go somewhere else, we can get out of this, double right click, and it will relocate us to that location. Now we can press the left D-pad. And now I'm holding down Shift to go. I can also press forward on the left thumbstick, and that will control the direction. And then if you want to slow down, you can press left trigger for brake. And you can control the camera using the right thumbstick. So give it a try, practice, play around, even if it's in the example projects, just to get a feel for it. And then for the last part of Explore Mode demo, I want to do it more on a real world example with traffic. As a note, traffic is not watching out for you when you're in Explore Mode. And so it'll just drive right through you, or you will drive right through it. One thing you can always do, if you want to make sure you're not driving through anything, is you can either turn down or turn off traffic for a certain lane. So let's say that we want to drive in this middle lane. We just need to make sure to find that lane, go to our traffic. We could turn volume down to 0. That way, when we reset our traffic, there won't be any traffic there. And now we can double right click and jump into our scene without worrying about a car driving through us. So same thing as before, I'm controlling the steering using the left thumbstick, the camera using the right thumbstick. I'm holding down the trigger to drive. You can also drive by pushing the left thumbstick forward, and then you can brake using the left trigger. You can switch to first person mode by pressing Y. And again, you can brake by holding down the left trigger. You're going to want to practice this because it is a little bit finicky the first time you do it. So give practice before you want to take this out for a spin at a public meeting or with a client. And then just one other note about this vehicle one, if you want to zoom out, you can just use the left scroll wheel, and then you kind of have a more zoomed out view of the same thing. All right, we're now going to go through the camera settings down here in the bottom left. This gives you more control over your camera. So the first thing is field of view. That's kind of how zoomed in or zoomed out something is. If you've ever heard of like a fisheye lens, that's if you go wide on the field of view. If you want something more tight, then you're going to do a tight field of view. So essentially like 0 would be isometric if it was possible. It's a good way to think about the difference here. 60 is the default, and also just note that there is a relationship between the field of view and this transform gizmo. So this is the default of how it looks at 60 FPS. If we go all the way out, it's going to get smaller. If we zoom all the way in, then it's going to get really big and get difficult to adjust it. So if you're having difficulty because the transform gizmo is too big, it's probably because your field of view is too tight. By default, you're in the free mode down here in the bottom left. That just allows you to zoom around the project as we showed in navigation. But we also have orbit and pan mode. So orbit is going to orbit around wherever it thinks the point of origin is. You can move that by double right clicking. If it's too locked in, just go back to free, figure out where you want to orbit, double right click, and then click the orbit button. From there, you can adjust the orbit distance, you can adjust the angle, and you can adjust the speed. And this isn't for cameras that you'll set up in the publisher that I'll show later, but this is just for maybe you want to view something really quick and just want it to rotate, or if you want to use the basic rendering panel and you want to do something simple, you can just set it up here, figure out how long you want your video to be, and then record video, and it will just record 10 seconds for whatever the camera is doing. So less structured, but a faster way to get a quick view. The next camera mode is pan. There are two ways that you can manage this. One is from relation to the camera, and one is relation to the world. And then you can say how you want it to move, up, down, left, right. These tend to be arbitrary, but you can play with them to figure out the camera that you want to get. And then you can also adjust the camera speed. Again, these can allow you to get a quick video render if you want to just use the basic rendering panel, or maybe you just want to set something up because you're viewing this with a client or at a public meeting. Let's switch back to free so the camera doesn't keep moving. If we go to settings, this is more precise measurements. And so these tell you exactly where the camera is in 3D space. If you wanted to remember where this camera position was, you could save these and it would come back to this exact same location. You can also adjust the pitch and the yaw, and these just allow you to rotate the camera in different directions. And then the camera distance is where the camera is in position to the global point of origin, not in relation to the base model. You can also copy and paste these values if you need to quickly remember them and paste them into another Civil Engine file. All right, the next element of this bottom left camera panel is the scene effects. This is both a useful and a fun way to show off your project. You could do this in real time. You can do this for image or video renders. And we have a number of different styles to choose from, starting out with blueprint. And if these are too strong, you can always adjust the parameters like the paper opacity or the line opacity, the paper scale, the line width, and so on. I'm not going to go through every setting of every one of these, but you can check them out yourself. I do want to show just a few other notes. Ballpoint pen might be my favorite. It's kind of a sketchy look, and you can adjust parameters on this one just like on most of the other ones. The CAD version is also kind of cool depending on what you want to do. These are especially useful if you want to do like a wipe. Like, look, this is, preliminary CAD, and then we're rendering at the exact same thing for final. If you want to look at the Civil Engine launch trailer at the very beginning, that's how I did that. I just rendered the same camera twice, and then just in video editing, added those together. So the CAD thing, it's not that great with trees just because there's so many things going on, but you can tell how cool that might be for some of the other geometry that's imported. This was originally an OpenRoads designer file, brought in through SketchUp, and it's showing off all those triangle faces. We also have water drops, which will kind of give a sense of rain. Water's not actually falling on the surface, but it does make it look like it's falling on the screen. We also have snow, and you can speed that up or slow that down. Just as a note, some of these might slow down the performance of the application. And then distance fog is actually pretty nice to use, and it might be useful in some scenarios where you don't have the end of your project kind of fully fleshed out. This might hide some of those blemishes. Actually, all of these might hide some of these blemishes. And just play around with them and see if they're useful for what it is that you're trying to do with Civil Engine. And we're going to talk more about photo compositing in a minute, but these also work for that. So let's say that we want to do a photo composite for a project like this, and I already have this set up. I just need to go to phasing, shut off my aerial, and then go to basic rendering, turn on my drone shots, go back to my saved camera, which is preset 2. And now you can see here, we can render this with the scene effects applied to the 3D model and not to the site photo, which is kind of a cool way to blend or to communicate maybe, design phases along the way. So lots of options there. I'm excited to see what you guys can come up with using these scene effects. All right, we already touched on this in the beginning, but I do want to just go a little bit more in depth in the basic rendering panel. Again, this big red circle over here on the right. So we have a number of things we can do, starting out with saved cameras. So if we want to save cameras, this is useful for photo compositing, but also just in general. Especially maybe you're worried about finding your place, getting lost off in outer space. You can always just use these. And then no matter how far you zoom off into the distance, I don't know where my project is, you can just go back with those camera presets. You can also rename and delete these. And then these can be dropped down and collapsed if you want to, but you can control the output by picking the folder. That's going to open up your Windows File Explorer. You can also adjust the file name that you want it to be saved at when it's rendered. We have a number of quality settings. The first is resolution. I usually recommend 4K. You may have issues with 8K because it's such high resolution. There's also 1080. These are just presets, but you can go to any resolution you want. Maybe you want to do vertical content, then we could do something like 1000 by 2000, and then just click this preview aspect ratio. And now we're able to render out something maybe for social media. Or maybe you just want to do like a square for Instagram. You can do that as well. The quality samples per frame, this just kind of says how many passes is it making when rendering. If you want it to be high quality, you can go all the way up. If you want it to be faster, you're not as worried about quality, you can go down. You can test this and see what works best for you. Most people may not even notice the difference as far as quality. So I wouldn't worry about going really high unless you're really concerned about someone noticing the quality. Maybe you're printing out something really big. We have next in settings, we have video length, 20. We have video frames per second, 60. Video format, you can choose MP4 or Avid lossless. Usually you're just going to want to use MP4. And then quality, which is just another quality setting. If you're concerned about that, you can set it there. So like, let's say that we want to render a video that's square and we want it to be a pan. Let's go a little bit faster. Then we can now record this video. And again, it's going to warm up that rendering engine, and then it's going to render out all those frames, and it gives you a preview while you're doing it down here at the bottom. So this is trying to estimate, based on the frames that have been rendered, based on how many frames are remaining, how long is this going to take? So right now it says, okay, we got less than 30 seconds left. It's also saying the pipeline state, which is producing frames. It's giving you a rendering preview, and then it's also showing you other statistics like the shot name and so on. So this one's going to go pretty quickly. Some of the longer ones, if it's a 2-minute long path camera following around on a 4K render, it may take 10 or 15 minutes. But in general, these go pretty quickly, especially in comparison to some of the older ways of rendering like V-Ray. And then this is how that video turned out. All right, and the last thing I want to show with the basic rendering is called screenshot with transparency. This is especially useful if you want the stuff in the background to be cut out. So anything in the sky. So let's go to our example projects, and there's this European road section. It's just a chunk of earth floating in the sky with our project on top of it. And if we wanted all of these trees and everything to be cut out, we can also pause it. So let's pause that, the traffic, to get it set right. Go to basic rendering, screenshot with transparency. And you can see it saved the transparency and in a PNG image. So you can just put it right in your graphics. So that's super useful option as well. All right, so we're now going to move to the publisher, which offers more advanced camera controls. And you're going to access that by clicking this big blue button down here in the bottom left. In the phasing video, we talked about 4D phasing. We're not going to cover that today, but we will be touching on cameras and the sequencer. So if we want to add cameras, we can add them here. So let's start with image cameras and say that we want to set up some cameras for our scene. We can do this in camera sets. So let's add a new camera set. So this is image set A. So now within this set, we can have a number of cameras. If we just move around our camera, click that add camera button, and it will save that camera position. So now we can jump between those positions really quickly using these thumbnails. We can also delete them, or we can render straight from this menu right here. So if you need a really quick render, you can just click that. It's going to use the settings that you have on the left, and it's going to create that render. We can also color our image sets. So if we have more than one, that we can easily identify them. And then we can also rename them. So this gives you a lot of tools to set up cameras and organize them for quick reference in the future. You can also name these individual cameras as well. So let's say that we want to name this one crosswalk. We can edit this and call it crosswalk. And then we can set the specific field of view for this specific camera. We can also refresh the thumbnail if we want to. And then we can control the other settings like per camera, or we can do it per set, or we can do this globally. So if there's one folder where you want all of your renders to go, then you want to click that, and then they'll be set for all of your other camera sets as well, as long as you have them set to global. And then we can control our quality samples per frame as well, which is just going to give you a number of passes to give a higher quality render. So that's how you set up and manage still cameras. Let's now move to video cameras. So same idea as before, but we want to add a video camera, and now we can add keyframes for that. So if we wanted to fly through this project, we can click and drag in this viewfinder to go to the next position, and then just keep clicking on those keyframes. And then when we're ready, we can preview between them. You can see up here in the settings, we can also adjust the length. So maybe that's too fast. We can make it 20 seconds, and it will slow that down. Also note that the time between these keyframes is consistent. So if you move the camera just a little bit, and then for the next one you move it a lot, it's going to be slow between the first ones, and then fast between the next one. Let's just do one more example of that. And the reason that the camera was going back like that is because it's using an interpolation. And this is actually the same type of interpolation that we use with our paths. So just to give you a visual of how that would work, let's say that we're going to do barrier rail, and we click 2 points close together, and then we go far. You can see that's what the camera is doing. So just understand that there is an algorithm that's trying to predict where the camera will go and trying to make sure it will go smoothly. That said, you do have some controls, if we go back in here, on how it's going to move between them. So currently it's on spline, but we could go to linear, And now you can see it's moving through those points rather than trying to go backward. And then the final type of interpolation is called eased. And this actually might be my favorite because you can do some really cool stuff with this. So let's say that we want to highlight different parts of our project, and zooming through them is just not going to work. And as I mentioned before, you can put keyframes, but it's going to move between them based on how close the camera is spaced. So on this one, let's add a keyframe here. Let's say that we want to highlight this crosswalk, and then we want to highlight this crosswalk down here, and then we want to highlight this intersection right here. So let's first try it with linear to see what we get. All right, so it's only 5 seconds, but it's still kind of chaos. We want it to kind of sit and marinate on those specific points of interest. So let's go back to ease, and let's do hold keyframes. So what that's going to do is it's going to hold the keyframe, and then when it moves between them, it's going to move much more quickly. So let's still slow this down to 20 seconds. Let's add one more keyframe here at the beginning. And so now you can see here, it's going to slowly move between them, and then zoom between to the next one. Now you get a slow movement. And so this really gives you some cool tools to kind of be the director of your film and tell the story of your project, which is the goal of Civil Engine all along. And then you can adjust these parameters like the hold duration and the hold distance to get the look and feel that you're looking for. And note too, if you're using the eased interpolation, the length probably isn't going to be exactly 20 seconds. It's going to be something different because it's holding depending on the parameters that you set. All right, so let's say that we want to do a camera following this road right here. So the first thing we could do, in the way that we've traditionally done it in other software, is we just add keyframes along that path, depending on how high we want it to be, how fast. You got to be careful to add keyframes evenly spaced so that it doesn't move too fast between them. And then you have some control with the interpolation to try and get some sort of smooth camera movement. So if you can do this, but it's not going to be smooth, and depending on the length of your corridor, this may take a while to set up. And you can see here that the direction of the camera is drifting based on where I set up those thumbnails. So in Civil Engine, we added a feature called Link to Path. So with this one, it's going to show all the paths that we've placed in our scene. So let's try and find one. That's not the direction we want. So we just linked to traffic all 1. And now it's going to automatically link that camera to that path. I can already tell this is going to be too slow or too fast. So let's slow that down to 50. And then I want to adjust the range because the beginning here, I don't want to show that. And then when we get to the end, it's going to, let's see what's at the end. We don't want to go into this intersection that we don't have developed. So let's have it end right here. So now we can fly right over our corridor without any extra work. We already placed the path when we placed the vehicles, and we're just linking the camera to that. Now from there are a number of settings that you can adjust, and you can do this in real time. So if you want it to be lower, you can bring that down. If you want it to tilt up more, you can adjust that up. You can also do horizontal offsets and horizontal tilting. You can also adjust forward and back. And so this allows you to do some pretty basic cameras, but also some pretty creative ones. And then we've got a number of presets that you can click, and all it's doing is just setting these values. So we've got aerial top down, we've got angled right. Again, you can do some pretty cool renders if you get these set up the way that you want them to. We've got right side perpendicular, which you can adjust the length to match the speed exactly, and then you can render that out, which is pretty cool. We also have straight aligned, which is kind of like the driver's view. We've got straight aligned medium and high, and then very high. So feel free to play around with the presets. Once you click a preset, you can adjust all the parameters afterwards. Again, all it's doing is pre-populating those values when you click these buttons.
Cruising down the block, visuals popping bright. Yeah, frame shifting quick, we got that 3D bike. Blueprints alive in the digital space. Crafting every detail, precision's our grace.
And just as a note, you could always just place a blank path and then connect it there. But it's usually going to be easier to connect a camera to a path that's already been placed. And one thing that you can do to make this easier, because when you do that link to path dropdown, it does have all the paths. So what you can do is you can go to the hierarchy and you can find the path that you want, and then you just rename it with camera. That way, when you go to back to the publisher, back to link to path, then it's going to have camera on there, and you already know that's the one that I want attached to the camera. All right, we're now going to cover the sequencer, which again, it's still in beta. You can access it through the publisher mode and then click this button here at the top. And the way to think of a sequencer is if you've ever used video editing, it works very similar to there, but it's kind of more interactive. So what you want to do is we're going to create timelines. So we need to create one first. Now we have a timeline, and we can name this Civil Engine Tutorial. And now we have a number of parameters. We can adjust the playback length, the FPS. We can also render just a custom length. Right now we just want to leave that the full length for now. We can also give a description. And then the thing we can do here is we can add all these cameras we just created. We can now add them to our timeline. So you can add both still cameras and animated cameras. So let's add a couple of these. And now as you scrub through, it's going to switch between those cameras one to another. Let's also adjust this to be something like longer so we can see all of them. So we've got that eased camera that was pretty cool. We've got that path camera. And now these are all part of our production, and we can render them all as one video file. You can also make adjustments to these by clicking and dragging and then moving them around just like you would any other sort of video editing. And then you can preview that. So again, this first one's still, let's make that, let's actually just delete that and move the rest of them. We can also adjust these up here in the start and the length in addition to from the timeline. All right, and these are dynamic. So if we went back and changed a parameter about this camera, let's say that this one, it's too high, we want to do something low, we can go back to that camera, go to video set E. Again, this is a path camera, so let's go to straight aligned to low. So now when we go back to our sequencer, then this is dynamically going to be updated. So again, this is like video editing, but these aren't video clips, they're cameras, and so that makes it a little bit more dynamic. All right, there are a few other things we can add to our production, and that includes text. So let's say that we want to add text here. I just clicked it, and because I have this bottom track selected, it's adding it here automatically. And you can see down here in the bottom left, it's really small, but it says text. Let's name this the name of the project. And then we can make this bigger. And then we can also adjust where that is in relation to the edge. So let's say we want it to be 50 pixels off the left and 50 pixels, negative 50 pixels off the bottom. We can also adjust the color of that, either using the presets or using these sliders to get the exact value that you want. And then you can decide how long you want that to be. There's also some presets about where you want it to be, top left, bottom left, and so forth. So this is a quick way to add text to your scene really quickly without the need to put it into video editing. There is a bug sometimes when you have text here, it doesn't allow you to click. If that happens, you just need to scrub past the text, and then you can click the play button, and I could go back. So feel free to add text to your own production. And then we can also add, when you go to other, we can add time of day. So this is kind of cool. Maybe you want to do like a sunset. Then we just adjust it here. So right here, it's from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We can adjust that. Let's say that we want it to be really early in the morning and then really late at night. And we want that to start from the beginning to the end. Now it's going to have that illusion of like the sun coming up on your project. Or maybe you just want it for one camera. Let's say that we just want that for this east camera that we have here in the middle. It's probably going to go pretty quickly. So, and wherever it ends off, that's where it's going to be for the rest of them. So if you wanted to make it go back to whatever time of day you want, you're probably going to need to add another one of those. So just kind of a fun way to add more creativity to your project. All right, the last element that you can currently link in your sequencer is phasing. In the future, we'll probably have more, especially scene effects. But for now, we can do phasing. So let's go here. I'm here in this construction phasing project. And so we first need to grab some cameras. We have a few here that we can grab. We need to adjust our playback length. These cameras are really long, so let's adjust those. All right, so we have two cameras, one where it orbits down and then one where it goes across. So what we can do here, in addition to the cameras, the text, and the time of day, is we can also add phasing if there are any phasing charts made. So here we do have this Gantt chart that we've made that shows all the staging of this project. So we go to sequencer and we want to add that chart. So it's pulling the name. This one's called new chart. So let's name this bridge construction, confirm. Now when we go to the sequencer, we'll see this is called bridge construction. Let's select this track here, press plus, and now it's going to go through and phase during the duration of these videos. So let's make this a little longer. And then however long you squeeze this in and out, that's how long your phasing is going to take. So if you want it to be really fast, you can make it short. We're going to just kind of make it the length of this. And then whatever phase it ends on in your Gantt chart, that's the phase that it's going to end on here as well. So here it's going to end on the bridge being finished. And so we can have that for our last scene. So now we can preview this. And you can see here, it's going to build our project while it's going through these cameras. So this is a really cool way to tie your phasing together with your cameras as part of this final production. All right, so let's go to change these settings. Let's add a little bit of text. You can also right click and there's some options there. So let's move this up. Let's call this existing. Adjust the size. Let's add some more text and let's call this one final. Let's do one last preview and then we'll render this out to show how it looks. All right, so everything looks good. Let's make sure we have the right folder and let's go to 4K, adjust our quality samples per frame. Those can be down. Let's make this standard and now let's render the timeline. So now it's going to render all of those elements in one single video file. All right, so this is how this video turned out. It's pretty cool. Obviously this was pretty quick and dirty, but you can do that all as one video. And just as a note, if your time on your sequencer is longer, it's going to render that full time, even if you don't have enough videos to extend that. So for example, in our details, we have it at 48 seconds, but our cameras only go out 12 seconds. So it will just continue rendering at wherever that camera ended off all the way to the 48 seconds. So you can cancel it and it will save the video file as is if it's done, if you're watching it, or you can just go here and go to 13 and then it will just render it. Or you can even be more precise and go 12.3. So I do want to point out one known issue, and that is that for certain bright colors, there's kind of a rendering glitch, something we're aware of and we do plan on fixing. But if you do have like reds and oranges and pinks, they may render with a glitch. So let's get some colorful elements like we have here, and let's go to add another. Let's add a big arrow. All right, so we've got all these bright glowing elements. Now we're going to set up a camera and render it out. We only need this to be 5 seconds to demo this. Let's also adjust our field of view a little bit. Make sure we've got the right output folder. 4K, 60 FPS, and let's render it. All right, so in the preview, everything might look fine, but when you get the final production, then I'll show you the glitches that you have. All right, so I mentioned that bright color render glitch, which is really annoying, and eventually we'll fix it. But until we fix it, I did find a workaround, and it's a little bit tedious, but it is an option, if nothing else. So you can see here, I'm in Adobe Premiere Rush, and this is just a simple video editing software. I've drug in both the render that I did, which is 10 seconds long, and then I also recorded my screen while I was doing it. So I'm using OBS, but you can use a number of different screen recording software. So what we want to do, and this isn't going to give you full 4K. I'm using a 4K monitor. It's going to give me something between 1080 and 4K, but again, better than the glitch for these bright colors. So what I want to do is just stack these on top of each other, and then you want to make sure that the length is the same. So let's go to time, and then we just go to make sure that they match up. Something like 510. We can probably get a little bit more precise there. This is just to make sure that our speed is exactly what it should be. So there. So now we've compressed it, and it should be 60 frames per second, no problem. And now we've got our render, but we've still got the border. So what we've got to do is go here to the crop. We want to maintain proportions, and then we just want to scoot it in until the sides are cropped, and then we can drag it down and make sure that the top and bottom are cropped as well. So not full 4K, a little bit tedious, but if you are having this issue, sometimes I've seen this happen, for example, with traffic lights, when it goes red, you get that issue. But you can see here, we go from the glitch area to the full area. And if you're having this issue and you're like, man, Sam, we paid for the software and it's glitching out and we don't know how to do video editing, just reach out to us at the contact us page and I'll do this for you. Just send me the CE file and I'll do this video editing portion for you, because again, we know it's a known issue and we will get it fixed eventually. All right, so now I'm going to talk about photo compositing, which is a feature that we originally kind of refined in Beyond Typicals, and then we brought it over. It's just the ability to bring images behind of or in front of your 3D model so that you can blend them together in one composite render, either an image or a video. So I'm going to show how this is done in this bend roundabout example project. You can find this here, and we have it all set up when you use Civil Engine that you can check it out yourself, but I've deleted all that stuff and I'm going to do it from scratch. So you can see here, we've got this roundabout, but it's all white. We don't even have aerials, and we want to composite it. So the first thing you can do is you can go to the base model, and then you can phase the areas that are the terrain or whatever the existing stuff is that you don't want to show up, that you want to show the image behind. You can phase that stuff by creating a phase called composite, and then in the base model you want to find those elements, so buildings and lots, and you want to just phase them with that composite off. So now whenever you're ready to do your render, you can go to phasing, click composite off, and you're good to go. These are just the elements you want to show up. So if we go to Google Earth, you're probably going to have your own files. This can be done with drone photos or street photos. Pretty much any angle you can do it with, but we're going to do it here with this top-down aerial that I'm getting here from Google Earth. So I'm just going to clip this out. You can also render out of Google Earth, but I'm just going to clip this out. And I'm going to call this bend aerial. All right, so now let's go back to Civil Engine, and let's go to our basic rendering tab. So by default, it's going to open the rendering tab here, but we want to go to photo compositing and we want to go to import new layer. Now we need to go find that image, and now we brought it in behind. We also, whatever resolution you're going to render it at, you want to make sure it's set there as well, because it's going to show up that way. And then make sure you have preview aspect ratio on as well. You can see here the image that we have isn't quite 4K, so we need to adjust it a little bit. So we can go here and we can just adjust the scale until it fits the edges of our render, like so. And now it's just a process of making sure we get this adjusted to the angle of the camera. So this one, it's an aerial image, so it's a little bit easier, but sometimes it may be kind of tedious to get it lined up. And you can use your mouse, just navigation in general, but you can also use the settings down here for more precise controls. You probably will also want to adjust the field of view to get it the way you want it to be. And I can know the orientation here because we've got the railroad tracks. And then you can also do fine-tune controls using XYZ here. So you can see when we really want to get it dialed in, we can adjust those. You'll see if I zoom all the way out, it just disappears. And what's happening is we've got to kind of set a distance for that image, depending on if we want it to be in front or in back. So we can just go to occlusion distance, and we can just push this way further back so that it doesn't do that. And then we can go here and get it zoomed in, and then we just need to position it before we render it. All right, so that took a minute or two, but I feel pretty good about our match. When you get a match, it's really important. You need to go to rendering and you need to save current camera, because if not, if you move things around, then you're gonna have to do it again. But because I saved that, I can go back to this. I can also rename it something like Composite 1 so that I know that that's what it is. So if we went to and we made another camera, we know that this one's Composite 1, this one's another camera. All right, so now that we're happy with this, and one other note is these images that you bring in behind your 3D model, they're gonna come in darker in the preview, but when you render them out, they should be the correct color. And before I render, another thing you can try and do, this is a little bit easier in Beyond Typicals, but you can also do some shadow matching. So over here on the left, we've got this tree, and we want to get some shadows to show. And so let's have a tree placed over there. And it's easier in Beyond Typicals because you have the ability to turn off the visibility of that asset, which we don't yet have in Civil Engine. But for now, we can just leave the tree as is. And then we need to make sure that the sun is matched to our image. All right, let's go back to Composite 1. And now we are ready to render. And you can render these as images or as videos. If it's a video, you usually want to keep it pretty short because it's not like a lot is going on with the camera movement. Make sure that we have the right folder selected, and then we just want to record video. All right, so looking at this render, there are a few things, if I want to be picky, that I could fix. So I'm going to do that. So the camera matching, we want to bring it in a little more, something like this. And then the other thing is I've got dirt here, but you can see it's grass. So let's just go to texture and let's paint grass there. Something more like that. And then we've got a number of trees that are kind of in the way. And so I just want to replace those in 3D so that at least it's not blocking on top of there. All right, so let's try rendering this out again. This time I'm just going to do a screenshot. And then something you can also do as well is render without the 3D model. To do that, you just want to bring this to the front. And when you render both, then you're going to get the exact same aspect ratio and lighting and all that stuff. And then you can do like wipe fades in video editing to show how it's different. And that's pretty cool. All right, so this is how it turned out. Again, this was maybe 10 or 15 minutes of work with revisions, so it goes pretty quickly. It's just the camera matching that usually takes the longest. So I want to show a few examples. So if we open this project back up the way that it is originally, you can see that I've done this with, and you need to go and set this at 4K, and we need to go turn this off. And then we've saved the cameras and you just need to find, I think it's preset 6 is the tightest. And you can see here, this is Google Earth, but I've cut it into 2 different parts, and you can do the same. I've got foreground and background because these trees are going to be blocking it. And if you can ever do that, it helps blend it in. We've got a lot of videos on our website about how you can do this in Beyond Typicals, but the same principles apply here. You do have to have some Photoshop skills to edit around some of those elements, but if you can, it's going to blend in much better, and you're going to get this nice blended photo composite or video composite if that's what you want to do. Here's another example. It's not built in as an example project, but you can find it if you click the More Example Projects button. And this is donated to us by Nevada Department of Transportation. It's an actual project here in Northern Nevada where I'm at. And we've got the same thing. I have the aerials. I've turned them onto their own layer called Composite. We can turn that off. We go to our photo compositing, and I've got a foreground and a background. I've already matched it. You can see here it's under construction in the drone shot. But then we can go here and we can match using one of these presets, preset 2, and then we can render this out as well. One cool tip is you can, I mentioned this earlier in the video, but you can use those scene effects to just add some more color or better tell the story of your project. So feel free to check all of those out as well. All right, and then we have this Boulder City Parkway project that we were showing earlier, and the same thing. We've got the aerials and the buildings and everything all turned off. We've got this Google Earth photo. You can match it together, and then you can save that camera and go back to it. And then you can also look at some options with your scene effects if you would like, or you can just render it out as is, as realistically as possible. All right, so that wraps it up for this video and for this tutorial series. My name is Sam Lytle. I'm the founder of Beyond CAD Incorporated. This is part of Beyond CAD University. You can go to beyondcad.com and click on the link to see more videos. Join us in our other videos. We've got Civil Visualizing with Sam and a bunch of other content on our website. Make sure to check it out. If you need help, if you need training or support, click on the Contact Us button on our website. We'd love to reach out with you. I really appreciate your support using Civil Engine, and I will talk to you in the next one.
Bringing dreams to light, grids and angles, we turn to gold. They the heart of the hustle where the vision unfolds. If you're mapping out the path, let me hear you say. If you're sinking with the dream, let me hear you say. We're in the street.